man. In a good way.
He's got the vanity of a bad actor, and the arrogance of a great writer.
What we'll never know is what's really going on in that head. I don't know whether I do want to know.
No, I'm here. I'm here because of a psychiatrist. I'm here because of a psychiatrist. Some crazy fucking Scotch bitch. I'm here because of a psychiatrist. I get up and I have a couple of aspirins, a mouthful of SR, you know, sometimes a glass of wine at 8 in the morning, which is really disgusting. You know why I'm here? And I get in here into this room and I sit here and I put a page in trying to think of the character. When I hear the voices, I say to my wife all the time, if I can't hear them, I can't write them. And then they come in sometimes. It's like trying to tune a radio. On a bad day, you got crackle and distortion and you can't tune in. It's like trying to get Buenos Aires. I had scenes in Withnell where I was bang on Radio 4 and I couldn't type it fast enough because they were talking so fast to me, you know. And that is, for a writer, is the great magic moment of writing, when you're just hearing these voices.
A trained actor reduced to the status of a bum. I mean, look at us. Nothing but reasonable members of society demand as their rights. No fridges, no televisions, no phones. Much more of this I'm going to apply for Meals on Wheels.
What happened to your cigar commercial?
That's what I want to know. What happened to my cigar commercial? What happened to my agent? Bastard must have died.
Meanwhile, my sources tell me 2 Army helicopters are landing here, just across the airfield. And now my sources tell me that there's a rumor that the United States Air Force dropped a bomb, or several bombs, on the city of Nyak Lung.
My grandfather was caught molesting a wallaby in a private zoo in 1919.
A wallaby?
May have been a kangaroo, I'm not sure.
You mean sexually?
I suppose so. He had his hand in its pouch.
Fucked it, didn't he?
He did not fuck it!
The same character goes through all the stories. It's a classic paranoid character that feels that the whole world is either spying on him or is out to get him, or that he is the one last bastion of sanity standing on this rock saying,
Bastards! You'll suffer! I'll show the lot of you! I'm gonna be a star!
I'm going to be a great star, or whatever the Withnell character did, or, you know, I'm going to see that this country has billboards all over it, or it's a sensibility of one man against the world.
I don't think I've ever sat down to write without having a head full of red. I drink lots of wine when I write for exactly the reason that you're not allowed to drink and drive.
I felt like eating Henry.
Because if you drink 2 bottles of wine and you're in a 30-mile-an-hour limit,
I felt like eating Henry.
you're going to exceed the speed limit and probably bugger something up. But that same sensation of drink drive is drink type is why I drink when I type, because I can exceed the speed limit. You know, I don't have to stay in 30. I'll do 90 sometimes.
Bit early in the morning for festivities, isn't it?
These aren't mine, they belong to him.
You're drunk.
I assure you I'm not, officer. Honestly, I've only had a few ales.
Out of the car. Please. Sir.
Bruce picks at that weird scab of English repression and the insanity of the stiff upper lip. I always loved the moment in Withnail and I when the Richard E. Grant character comes in and orders the finest wines in the clotted cream tea room.
If you don't leave, we'll call the police.
Balls. We want the finest wines available to humanity. We want them here, and we want them now.
And that overturning, debunking of the sort of British institution, which is part and parcel of a sort of middle-class life, is what I find fascinating with Bruce's work. You know, it's like Ealing on acid.
All hairdressers are in the employment of the government. Hair oil aerials. They pick up signals from the cosmos and transmit them directly into the brain. This is the reason bald-headed men are uptight.
What absolute twaddle.
Has they just been busted?
No.
Then why is he wearing that old suit?
Old suit. This suit was cut by Hawks of Savile Row. Just because the best tailoring you've ever seen is above your fucking appendix doesn't mean anything.
He's a huge Charles Dickens fan, and I think you see that in the work. You see that in Withnail, in the kind of grotesque quality of a lot of the imagery, and in a lot of the settings and the sense of atmosphere that he creates, which is what carries the film forward, together with that kind of dialogue that just trips off the tongue and gives you a real insight into who these characters are.
Don't get uptight with me, man.
Because if you do, I'll have to give you a dose of medicine. And if I spite you, you'll know you've been spoken to. You wouldn't spite me.
You're
too mean.
Besides, there's nothing invented I couldn't take.
If I medicined you, you'd think a brain tumour was a birthday present.
I could take
Double anything you could.
The humour comes out of the characters, which of course are Bruce. It's the fact that it's coming from him transcends something like the Full Monty, where you feel people sat down and wrote something that was going to be a good comedy. Withnail's not a comedy, I don't think, even though it makes you laugh.
Now, what I'm writing at the moment, I'm trying to write anyway, is a little two-hander comedy. It's called The Block, and it's about a girl who steals a very famous writer's manuscript. The lead character is an American, astonishingly cynical, kind of gruesome, uptight, claustrophobic freak, i.e. is me, except I'm not American. 36. 36, s'il vous plaît. 36? I want 37. I want the best goddamn room in the joint. I want the fucking penthouse. I have to speak it out loud because there is a kind of a music in there. You know, when you're with someone who can tell a really good joke, although I hate jokes, but someone who can tell a really good joke, they get the rhythm of the joke right. So I have to say it till it sounds right to my ear, and then I think, hey, that sounds witty, that sounds funny to me. I want to live in it. Which is why I'm quite strict with actors about the lines. I'm paying for it, I want to live in it. If I, as a pretty bad actor, can act the line and make it work, I need a good professional actor to make the line work. You know, I won't have any of this improv bollocks that actors like to do, you know, because I've sat in here for hours and hours and hours to make it work. Now, if I can say it, they can say it. Otherwise, they better not act for me.
I had met him as a cinema goer because I'd seen him in The Story of Adele H. and Romeo and Juliet as well, when he was Benvolio.
Turn thee, Benvolio. Look upon thy death.
I do but keep the peace. Put up thy sword, or manage it to part these men with me.
What? Drawn and talk of peace?
Initially, of course, Robinson wanted to be an actor, and he went to the Central School of Speech and Drama with that in mind. Oddly enough, almost as soon as he got there, he began to feel uncomfortable with it. And he acted in a few movies, and his career as an actor really peaked with Adele H., in which he played the leading role.
I remembered him as, certainly in The Story of Adele H., as being an incredibly handsome rock and roll kind of looking man who was a crap actor. And the person that I was living with at university had a picture of him up in our bathroom because she thought that he was very fanciable.
Votre père a changé d'idée. Je ne l'aurais pas cru.
Alors tu vois, nous pouvons nous marier maintenant.
Je vous l'ai déjà dit, Adèle, c'est hors de question.
Because that was my first exposure to writing per se, I was looking at screenplays, so I thought, you know, I remember thinking, God, I can do these better than this, I could do this better than this dialogue sucks. You know, so I started writing screenplays. Had I been a better actor, I'd have probably gotten to the theatre and started maybe writing plays, although thank God I didn't, because I can't bear plays.
I read a manuscript copy of what became Withnail, an early draft, and I thought it was wonderful writing, just kind of a tour de force of writing. I didn't particularly like the subject matter, and I certainly wasn't. The idea of doing it as a movie didn't necessarily appeal to me, but I thought it was just a stunning piece of writing and really interesting, original.
He was the one who brought him in and got him to work on various projects, some of which did get done, some of which didn't. A script for Germinal, based on the Zola novel. A script of The Moderns, which was later made by Alan Rudolph. He even commissioned a script for High Rise by J.G. Ballard, which is still sitting on the shelf somewhere and ought to be made.
I have no idea. It's a pretty inspired idea, but I have no idea why I took The Killing Fields to him. Partly, I think, because Bruce has quite a lot of anger in him, and he has very strong feelings about right and wrong, imperialism, non-imperialism.
I don't know if you've ever seen a B-52 in flight, have you? It's like hell. It's like something coming through the gates of hell. It's bigger than a 747 with 4 engines. Black they are. They paint these things black. They're like hell. Birds out of hell. So the Cambodians, this charming country that hasn't had any grief from anyone for 8 centuries, suddenly is being bombed day and night by the most powerful nation on earth. And by God, it made me so angry, you know, which was the thing that motivated me to write The Killing Fields.
For the past 5 years, as indicated on this map that you see here, North Vietnam has occupied military sanctuaries all along the Cambodian frontier with South Vietnam.
The flickering screen seems to hypnotize the atmosphere. This is 1968, and the year the illegal bombing of Cambodia began. Edited highlights of political mendacity. The president is making his famous speech about peace.
There will be no American combat troops or advisors in Cambodia. We will aid Cambodia. Cambodia is the Nixon doctrine in its purest form.
And the B-52s almost fly out of his mouth. The giant aeroplanes dump their filth over a jungle landscape. They move with the velocity of flies. Bombs burst like little lines of bubbles.
When I first read The Killing Fields, I think it was 325 pages long, I absolutely couldn't put it down. And that happens very rarely with screenplays. And the sense that one had that Bruce was in those scenes had somehow, in a strange way, got himself present in them was phenomenal.
What Bruce did was he supplied us with trigger after trigger after trigger. I mean, one of the very interesting things is that the Nessun Dorma sequence was written. Bruce wrote that. Everything that happens when Schomburg walks in and puts the music on, watches the images on television. There's not a word spoken, but that is all written by Bruce. The synchronicity, tone and texture and energy.
Television images and opera dominate all. Only Puccini survives the fade. And here it is, and this is what the words add up to. Pran is digging a trench in Cambodia. The sun is overhead, hard black shadows, and black pajamas, straw hats, and Ho Chi Minh sandals made out of tractor tires. A citizen of democratic Kampuchea. I'd been writing seriously for 15 years before The Killing Fields. And then suddenly, you know, you go from nothing to a big picture like that with an Oscar nomination and all the rest of the bollocks. You know, it was a shock to me.
This is Bruce Robinson.
Thank you terribly. There's so many people that I'd love to thank, but I'm going to reduce it to one, and that's Roland Joffe. I sort of conceived it, but he brought the thing up, and he did it wonderfully, in my opinion. Thank you.
But I hate Hugh and Henry and dog 'em in the weeds.
I could strangle you. It's a horrible process, and I don't enjoy writing. It's lonely and ugly experience, and normally it would be sort of typing with my nose because I'm so fucking
Because
pissed.
of this $200 an hour Scotch bitch.
The difference between me now and me when I'm on my own is it's a lot more extreme. I mean, you sort of see me waddling up and down, having a glass of wine and a fag, and there he goes, the hound, waddling about, as though it's sort of an easy process, and it isn't. I mean, it's the most nightmarishly difficult thing to do for me. I find it very hard, you know.
But I'm not in love with you.
I mean, literally, when I say I'm typing with my nose, Sophie's come in here and caught me typing with my nose, where I'm sort of... I use a typewriter simply because I can get at the paper, i.e. I'm typing and I have an idea and I can get a pen on the side of the piece of paper. Also, I can hate the paper. Anything I do wrong, I can tear the bastard out and flob at it, cover it in wire and throw it in the bin. I must have paper, I must be in contact with the paper. In fact, normally on these machines, on these lovely IBMs, I normally tear that top off. But I keep that top on because of my James Joyce quote there. Write it, damn you. What else are you good for?
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Fat Man and Little Boy, the true story behind the building of the first atomic bomb. The first draft, or second draft, at any rate the draft I read, I thought was brilliant, and was a real eye-opener. It was an expose, and was Bruce at his political best.
Bruce became absolutely obsessed about what he saw as the murder of Oppenheimer's mistress by the precursor of the CIA. And that's really what he wanted to write.
If you were able to read his last draft, you would see that it's entirely his voice. Within it was an extraordinary mine of Bruce Robinsonism, and that's as good as it gets. I mean, he wrote wonderful things that I feel could have been crafted into a great film.
I sat down and rewrote the screenplay, much to Bruce's total fury, which may or may not be right. I have no idea. I just did what seemed to me to be right. And a lot like being a crusader, it kind of depends which side of the crusade you were, whether you think it was a good or a bad thing. So after I'd done this, I didn't really see hide nor hair of Bruce, except I think we vaguely tossed letters at each other over the Writers Guild adjudication.
I knew everything about the atomic bomb, and yet I didn't get one phone call, you know, after 2.5 years of work, one phone call saying, why is this scene like this? You know, what is this about? You know, is it correct that Groves did this? Is it correct that Oppenheimer did that? You know, so Roland and I have fallen out in a big way, and ever will have fallen out in a big way. It's the biggest disaster I've ever had in my life, the biggest writing tragedy, the biggest hole in my writing career I've ever had was that Joffe film.
Writers are always subject to this kind of rape and pillage. I think in The Dead of Night, one of the reasons that Bruce became a director was to avoid this sort of issue in the future, that, you know, he doesn't want other people chewing up and spitting out his work.
I want you to take one deep breath and fill this bag. Are you refusing to fill this bag?
I most certainly am.
Placing you under arrest.
That'd be ridiculous. I haven't done anything. Look here, my cousin's a QC. Get in the back of the van!
I'm pleased that Bruce didn't fall into that groove of making drama realism that has a sort of, you know, a political edge. And then he managed to make and direct a film as different as Withnail and I. His next film, How to Get Ahead in Advertising, didn't succeed at the box office and probably was overly criticised because of the expectations after Withnail.
Hi, my name's Barbara Simmons, and I'm a biochemist. But at night, I'm a woman, and I want my skin to be at its best. So, I recommend a new product. It's called whatever the fuck it's called, and I use whatever the fuck it is because I know it works. And I should know because I make it.
Mrs. Bagley on line 1.
What do you want?
I think that How to Get Ahead in Advertising is the better movie.
Listen, I don't think I'm going to make it back tonight.
Which is not to detract from Withnail at all. I just feel that How to Get Ahead in Advertising had the humour, but it had a political kind of wave to it.
I was so inflamed, I was so angry at that period in my life that people were buying this ridiculous lie of this stupid, silly woman, Baroness Thatcher. And so I thought she was the boil. It was cancer. Cancer on politics.
Hiya, handsome.
I was ranting and raving, you know, and I was ranting and raving and ranting and raving and writing this ranting and raving and saying to Richard Grant, rant this for me, you know.
We're living in a shop. The world is one magnificent fucking shop. And if it hasn't got a price tag, it isn't worth having.
I said, don't you think that if it hits this relentless ranting note that we're going to be in trouble, that people are just going to tire of it? He said, no, you're completely wrong. So I kind of gave up on that tack.
And in fact, it upset the balance of the movie because there was too much rant and not enough movie.
If happiness means the whole world standing on a double layer of foot deodorizers, I, Bagley, will see that they get them. I'll give them anything and everything they want. By God, I will. I shall not cease till Jerusalem is builded here, on England's green and pleasant land.
He sort of goes on political rampages, but, you know, I think it's sort of like fireside polemics. He drives an Aston Martin. He lives on a sort of country estate in Herefordshire. He won't drink anything other than vintage wines. He likes to fly first class. He likes all the trappings of upper class life. Horses, riding, all that stuff. So I think it's all complete bullshit.
Now I've made some money. Now I have got an Aston Martin. Now I do live in a lovely house. And I'm supposed to change all my political point of view just because I got some material advantage. That is the Tory myth. That's what the Tories want you to do. It's a piece of shit.
You would have thought that having made the 2 films that I did with him, that would have been a great springboard to getting more finance or to do more English character-based comedies. But he then went to America and did a serial killer to order movie for a studio. And because his sensibility is not American, trying to appropriate an American voice seems like shooting yourself in the foot somehow.
All right, let me put it to you this way. How old do you think I am? 26, 39, or 53?
53.
You must have some idea about him.
When we spoke on the phone, did you know I was blonde?
No.
Why not? You heard my voice. You don't have some kind of sixth sense, you know, except in ridiculous novels.
Every so often you get a hold of words that are very unique in their point of view. And Bruce has that, I think, inherently in his work. I think his mind is sort of off his point, you know, it's off to one side, so he sees things from a perspective that not most writers or most people live in.
I didn't want to write it as a fast Michael Douglas, you know, slapping, gun-shooting cop film. It was always meant to be a heavyweight picture.
Wow, it just went off. You just put him down. And you get hit by Glazer, you stay down. But he ain't dead. Now you realize you shot your partner. Oh, Susanna, how am I gonna get out of this one? I know. Serial killer shot him.
I just thought it was very unique to the thriller genre. Unfortunately, the movie had been compromised as it got into the post-production and the editorial part of it, so a lot of Bruce's work did not end up in the final cut of the film.
We did make a bloody good movie. It was incredibly well received by the public in all the previews, and then Paramount come in and hack the thing down by 15 minutes, simply because if you've got a movie that's 2 hours, you can get 3 shows a night, and if it's 2 hours 20, you only get 2 shows a night. I basically got shafted because I said to them, I said, I wrote this, I directed it, and I can't understand it, so what are you going to do?
Because he's such a meticulous writer, he builds, scenes exist in movies for a particular reason, and therefore they have to be paid off. And when you pull one out or you pull the payoff off, then the other one drops, and before you know it, sort of the very fabric of why we're all here tends to fall apart.
I'm a bloody good dialogue writer, I know I am, but at the same time, I haven't got much resilience. And, you know, like doing Jennifer 8 cost me 6 years of not wanting to do it again.
He virtually disappeared, but he's a workaholic, so he writes all the time, even when stuff is not being produced. And curiously enough, as often happens in film careers like this, he's now got 3 things which have all come out together. You've got the novel, The Peculiar Memories of Thomas Penman. There's talk already of his possibly directing a film of that. And then you've got 2 other major Hollywood projects with his name on them.
I wrote In Dreams for Spielberg, you know, for him, who clutched it to his tit on his boat in the Atlantic, saying, Bruce, this is my next picture. Within a week, Neil Jordan was directing it. But that's Hollywood.
Neil got Bruce's script, which he thought there were great elements of, and did a rewrite. I don't think he's in any way belittled what Bruce has put into the script. If anything, I think he's just taken it to another area.
There's no way I can write a film about a paedophile and show a child in jeopardy. You know, here comes the problem then. How do you write a film about a child killer without showing a child in jeopardy? That was the big problem. And it took me 3 months to work out a way to solve that, and I did solve it, and Neil took 3 minutes to bust it.
Claire? Claire?
I don't think you hire Bruce to write your screenplay. You hire him to write his screenplay. And if that's what you want, you get your money's worth. But if you want him to be a stenographer, I think you're balking up the wrong writer.
Oh, everything I've ever written's been fucked. I mean, the only reason I wrote this novel was because I got so sick of people second-guessing and changing my dialogue. You know, so I just had to write a novel to be in control. And Withnail and I and Thomas Penman are the only things I've ever totally controlled as a writer in my life. And they're my favourite things, because they're what I want to do, you know.
Two winds came off the north. It was a day of bitter cold, clothes to be worn like weapons. Thomas coasted down the hill on his bicycle, past the deserted tea rooms and dark little sea shops of York Gate. Hardly a person about, only he and gulls on the jetty. The jetty stuck out like a benevolent arm embracing half the beach, and had been doing nothing different to that for 500 years. By a process of gravity and nowhere else to go, everyone who visits Broadstairs will end up here, leaning over this balustrade and looking out to sea.
Bruce's new novel is full of the inverse notion that the seaside town is this place of frivolity and fun. And it's really what it is darkness and exclusion and terrible, awful nightmares.
It's about me as a child growing up in Broadstairs with a mad fascist dad and a mother who was ruined by what had happened in her life. There's a line in Thomas Penman, I was brought up like vomit.
The situation at home had gone from bad to worse, and Thomas started stacking saucepans inside his bedroom door. He kept a permanently wired Black & Decker under the bed with a 3/8 masonry bit in the chuck. If Rob got on top of him, he would drill a hole in the back of his head. There was also a 3-foot wood saw in case of power cuts. While being strangled, Thomas would attempt to saw his father's legs off.
I think the novel manages to tackle major issues of what it's like to grow up in an utterly dysfunctional family. And because he takes them to an absurd degree, it's like reading The Addams Family.
Listen, said Thomas. Shut up, snarled Rob on his feet like some awful flesh engine. You're just a loud-mouthed, lying little cunt. No slip of the tongue this, no spur of the moment either. This was a history of moments, an articulation of animosity reaching far back into Thomas's childhood. It was enunciated with such venom, such spite in the eyes. It took the breath out of everyone, including, it seemed, even the man that said it. And it was the worst thing, now and forever, that had ever been said to Thomas in his life.
The novel is certainly autobiographical. I remember he came round to me once, years ago. He rang up and said, could he come round? And he came round to tell me that his grandmother had just died and on her deathbed had told him that his father was not his father.
It was like the play of the week in that she started spilling the beans. You know, I was 30 years old. I always knew that this mad, bloody fascist father wasn't anything to do with me. I physically didn't look like him in any way whatsoever. My mother had an affair in the war and got pregnant, which was me, with some Yank GI or somebody. I don't know. I don't know who my father was.
He could remember the misery, acrimony and injustice, the clear sense of foreboding when he knew he was coming home. He could remember getting hauled out and beaten like a dog, but he never cried. He made a promise then and will keep it now. I will give you no tears, I will give you no laughter. To laugh because of you or cry because of you would be sharing something with you, and I will never share anything with you for as long as I live.
More than anything, his book is pure Bruce. One could feel his you know, the pain, and it's this pain fused with humour that makes him unique.
I have of late, but wherefore I know not, lost all my mirth. And indeed, it goes so heavily with my disposition that this goodly frame the earth
seems to me a sterile promontory.
You can't separate Bruce from the childhood he went through, which you don't have to be a shrink to realise that particular experience, which is basically in his book, set him up in a way that he's been trying to escape from ever since.
I can't ever crack it. I'll never ever crack it because I'm always telling the same story. Everything I've ever written, like The Killing Fields, is about a victim, you know, Dith Pran. Withnail and I is about a victim. It's I in the beginning, then it becomes Withnail. The Boil is about the victim. Bagley becomes the victim. Fat Man and Little Boy about the atomic bomb, about the victim, Oppenheimer. Thomas Penman's about a victim, a little kid, a victim. And I constantly am retelling that story. But that's the thing that I've always felt all my life, is that I am a victim because I wasn't loved as a child. And I have to try and work it out again. Okay, well, I haven't busted it on the last one. Let's have a go at another one. No, and then he says, you know why I'm here? I'm here because of a psychiatrist, some crazy manic fucking Scottish bitch. She told me I'm in love with you. That's what he said. I've got 4 more pages to write, then all I've got to do is type it up.
I'd rate Bruce Robinson as one of the top but eccentric talents in filmmaking. You take the kind of hymnal passion, the pure hymnal passion of The Killing Fields. I mean, it soars, that movie, a bit like Nessun Dorma, with the kind of eccentric, warty quality of Withnail and I. And then the frigidity and rather kind of long-toothed cold-bloodedness of Jennifer 8. And these are all the same person, and the delight, I think, is that Bruce is capable of being all those people, and he doesn't mix them up.
I think it's a great loss to British cinema that Bruce isn't out there churning out movies, but I think that might be as much down to Bruce, and as much down to the fact that the kind of movies that Bruce would want to make under any climate will be difficult to finance and difficult to make.
In a way, he's probably too good a writer for today's cinema. I mean, that's a dreadful thing to say. But I don't get the sense that movies being made today make the kind of demands, literary demands of the script. They don't have the passion, they don't have the engagement that Bruce brings to a project. He hasn't got it in him, thank God, to be a hack. He's too good.
This guy's tied to the bed, right? A fat man in his early 60s walks in. He's dressed from head to toe in leather. He also carries a whip. Bradley, who's tied face down onto the bed with his ass sticking up, says, "Who the fuck are you?" The old man tears a zip across his mouth, revealing a disgusting face. Le Batman. Sweat and alarm on Bradley's face. He tries to work out some reason for why he shouldn't be flogged. Bradley says, "I'm not homosexual." And Le Batman says, "It does not matter. Only one of us needs to be." Cut.